Long ago, before the dawn of Hyrule's kingdom, a battle of great and terrible consequence shook the foundation of all creation. The Demon King, newly reborn, had challenged the goddess's chosen hero, the only human to have ever had the courage to take up arms against him. With an unbreakable spirit and a sword that drives back demons, the hero struck a killing blow against that being who represents the end of the divine. The sword in the demon's hand dissolved into the ether, and with his final ragged breath, Demise uttered these words.
Extraordinary. You stand as a paragon of your kind, human. You fight like no man or demon I have ever known. Though this is not the end. My hate never perishes. It is born anew in a cycle with no end. I will rise again. Those like you, those who share the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero, they are eternally bound to this curse. An incarnation of my hatred shall ever follow your kind, dooming them to wander a blood-soaked sea of darkness for all time.
The one called Demise, the apocalyptic one, spat these words, forever cursing Hyrule to contend with an incarnation of his hatred for all eternity. Or so we thought. However, lost in the fog of translation lies knowledge that leads us to a very different interpretation of the curse that we thought we understood. A hidden meaning found buried in the original Japanese version that could upend your entire Hyrulean worldview. In this video, I'll focus on this curse and uncover how the original Japanese reading changes everything we thought we knew about Demise'S words. I'll examine whether there is any evidence that Demise cast a curse, whether casting that curse would be a huge mistake, and answer this question. Was Demise'S curse misunderstood all this time? The prevailing idea of Demise casting this hex with his dying breath is rooted in the English localizations as well as merchandise like Hyrule Historia. It has defined the image of Demise as we know him in the West. However, the Japanese script may reveal a different story, one that reframes who the true victim of this curse really is. Have a look at Demise'S words, translated from the original Japanese. By doing so, we can see how the differences between the languages could potentially alter our understanding of the lore of the series.
Human, you, the strong human who has been able to overcome me. That was splendid, but remember, this is not over. My hatred, the curse of the demon tribe, they shall go on continuously reincarnating across the flow of time.
Right here, we have a significant difference from the English version. The curse's designation is the Curse of the Demon Tribe. Rather than being known as Demise'S curse, the true name tells us that this curse is tied to the entire demon tribe. Keep this in mind and let's hear the rest of the quote.
Never forget this. This will happen again. You who possess the blood of the goddess and the soul of the hero shall forever be unable to escape from this curse. This hatred, this grudge, its incarnations shall go on strugglingly wandering along with you within a dark sea stained with your blood forever.
The rest of this quote goes on to affirm that the curse in question is portrayed as the unending conflict between the demon tribe, the hero's soul, and the goddess's bloodline. Just as in the English version, the Japanese account highlights that they are bound to this curse. However, there is one detail that is not found in the English localization. Demise tells us that the demonic incarnations of this hatred and grudge are also going to be struggling and wandering, not just the hero and the goddess's blood. It seems like the implication here is that the demons themselves are under the umbrella of this curse. Is it possible that the curse of the demon tribe is actually a curse upon the demon tribe? How could this possibly be the case? First, let's answer the question, what is the source of the curse? The scope of this curse is one that stretches across eternity and touches even gods like Hylia. I think most of us would agree that casting such a curse would require immense power, surpassing that of most beings in the Zelda universe. With that being the case, another question must be raised. Does it make sense for the perishing Demise to be able to cast such a powerful curse at the very moment of his death? If Demise had the power to cast a curse that can bind gods, transcend time and space, and get around the curse-breaking Master Sword, why didn't he simply use a fraction of that power to save himself from dying? The reason is either a concept known as plot-induced stupidity, or perhaps it is actually that the curse is something that has existed long before Demise. However, if this curse actually precedes him, then it would indicate that he is not casting a spell on his deathbed, but is merely rehearsing these words in a final act of spite. After all, there is no indication of any magic spell being performed by him as he speaks. Of course, this leaves Hyrule with a chilling question. If Demise isn't the source of the curse, what is? Even before the introduction of Null into the lore, there were indications of forces that preceded this Demon King. It is presumed that Demise is the de facto primordial evil of the entire series. The English localization says that he is the source of monsters among other incredible things. Fi, your analysis please.
Of course, Master. Target lock, Demise. This eternal being has conquered time itself. It is the source of all monsters. According to tales passed down through generations, it appears differently in each epic and to each person who lays eyes on it.
You'll notice that Fi refers to Demise as it in the English quote. This is a reference to the fact that Demise is not his proper name in the Japanese. Shuen no Mono is meant to capture the idea that this being ushers in an ending, or a demise. Rebuttals to Demise being the primordial evil are somewhat common. A prominent example of those is the claim that evil existed before the advent of Demise, therefore he cannot be the ultimate origin. This can be demonstrated in a few places, but a standout piece of evidence is found in the very rarely known story of the ancient warrior of Skyward Sword's past. Fi, recall the story for us.
In ancient times, a great warrior devised a strategy to collect lots of arrows. The warrior took out his wooden shield and approached the Bokoblin fort. He hid behind his shield as the Bokoblins rained arrows down on him. He then retreated out of range. Many arrows were stuck in his wooden shield. All he needed to do then was pull them out and fire them back at his enemies with his bow.
In this account, we have evidence of a warrior battling against the demon Bokoblins. Demise states that humans during his time were cowards that only hid behind Hylia, so this warrior's story seems to be an incident that happened sometime before Demise arrived on the surface and Hylia sent the humans skyward. If the Bokoblins and demons like the Staldra already plagued the world before Demise's advent, then he is unlikely to be the origin of all evil and monsters as a whole, but perhaps merely the source of most monsters at this point in time. After all, Even the beginning of Skyward Sword tells us that there are other legends, long hidden away from memory, that are intertwined with this tale. If Demise is not the wellspring of all evil, malice, or grudge, what does this make him? Is he simply another incarnation of darkness, just like Malladus or Ganon? What would be the true source of all darkness in the universe if not this particular Demon King? Perhaps Demise gave us the answer already, with allusions to manifested and reincarnating negative emotions like hatred. Let's consider the effectiveness of the curse of the demon tribe from another point of view. When looking at the effects of the curse under the commonly held interpretation, the purpose of it is supposed to be a way to continually antagonize the mortals and the divine. The mention of mortals being doomed to wander a blood-soaked sea of darkness tells us how the demons are supposed to gain an advantage from this curse. However, logically speaking, casting this curse under that mentality is irrational and doesn't seem to benefit the demons. Demise directly tells us that his desire is to claim the Triforce so that he may subjugate and rule the mortal realm, as well as strike at the gods. Towards this end, casting a curse that ensures that the hero's spirit and the goddess's blood will always be around to combat the demon tribe is a move that would guarantee that the demons can never accomplish this feat unopposed. Wouldn't it make more sense for the demons to cast a curse that prevents the hero or the goddess blood from appearing, rather than one that ensures that they do? This way, they could conquer the world of light with no opposition. Instead, the curse we know of accomplishes the opposite. With this being the case, it almost feels as if the demon tribe are the ones who are getting the bad end of the deal with this curse. Every time that they want to attack the light world, a hero will rise up alongside them. From their point of view, it's possible that they would see this as a terrible inconvenience. Looking at it this way, it becomes unclear what overarching force implemented this curse. If it was a demonic force, then the curse is silly, as it prevents the demon tribe from succeeding. If the force that implemented this curse is divine, then it seems to help ensure that the mortals always have a chance to defend themselves. This leaves the door open to expand the lore of Zelda's demons and divines much further than before. Popular interpretation of Demise'S lore has led fans to believe a few auxiliary theories. One such theory is that Demise is a god that used to have a cryptic relationship with the goddess Hylia. This belief comes from the dialogue spoken by him when the topic of Hylia is brought up, as he refers to her previous form in terms of admiration. Parallels with the Shinto characters Amaterasu and Susanoo are often brought up when discussing this topic, and I'd like to take a moment to explore this idea. With Demise in mind, let's consider Susanoo and the other figures of Shinto mythology. His nature, his defiance against Amaterasu, and his associations with storms make him a tempting candidate to align with Demise. However, there's another Shinto figure to consider who fits Demise just as closely in certain ways. That figure is Kagutsuchi, the god of fire. Unlike Susanoo's mere rebelliousness, Kagutsuchi's very birth caused the death of his own mother, the goddess Izanami. Kagutsuchi embodies something closer to Demise's role in The Legend of Zelda. Not just a rebel against the gods, but an incarnate concept of the death of the gods. The gods' demise, if you will. Even in appearance, the parallels between Demise and Kagutsuchi are striking. His burning mane, his sanguine visage, and the aura of searing wrath around him recall Kagutsuchi's flames. In other franchises, characters portraying Kagutsuchi often share many design parallels with Demise, making the connection a little harder to dismiss. However, one glaring flaw in these comparisons is that Susanoo and Kagutsuchi are both kami in Shintoism. Demise is explicitly stated to be a demon and not a god. While it is a popular theory in Zelda that Demise is a god comparable to Hylia, this is a theory that the games debunk. Not only is it stated that he is a demon king, the fact that he desires to use the Triforce is a strong signal that he cannot be of the gods' tribe. Fi, recall Hylia's words.
For while the supreme power of the Triforce was created by gods, all of its power can never be wielded by one. Knowing this power was her last and only hope, the goddess gave up her divine powers and her immortal form.
Hylia herself acknowledges that the gods' tribe cannot use the Triforce's power. If Demise had the form of a god, his plan would be totally in vain. Nevertheless, I'll leave you with this food for thought. Hylia proves to us that it is possible to transform from the divine to a mortal. Batro proves to us that it is possible to turn from a demon into a mortal. Ganondorf proves that a mortal can become a demon king. And the horned statue of Hateno shows that it is possible to be turned from a god into a demon. Make of that what you will. So, what is the verdict about the true nature of the curse of the demon tribe? We have highlighted how this is not Demise's personal curse, but it is tied to the demons. Furthermore, it was shown that it is plausible that this curse was something that has been in place before Demise ever set foot upon the surface world. What does this mean for Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf? If the line of reasoning that we have been following is indeed the correct interpretation, then it means that the hero, Link, as well as the goddess blood, Zelda, are not being dragged along by the utterance of a single demon. Rather, their continued recurrence would be a blessing for the people of Hyrule, perhaps a fulfillment of some sacred binding that ensures that the mortal realm would not be defenseless against the forces of darkness. This also has implications for the most persistent of demon kings, Ganondorf. While it remains true that he is an incarnation of hatred, malice, and darkness, the ties to Demise personally do not seem to be as overarching as some might have believed. It seems unlikely that there will be any return of Demise via the body of Ganondorf, and that's probably why we have not seen anything of him to this day. The cycle functions just fine without further appearances or allusions to Demise. Fi does confirm his total obliteration in the present, and Impa confirms that his residual consciousness is decaying in the past. So what plausible answers do we have for the questions laid out at the beginning of this video? Did Demise actually cast a curse? Demise's final words, the curse in question, does not appear to be one that comes from his own power. It is something bigger than him, beyond the scope of what we have seen, and it is a look behind the veil regarding the sacred, mortal, and demon realms. Was the curse a smart move from the demon's point of view? After considering the cost-benefit analysis, I believe it is safe to say that the idea of Demise casting this hex would be a net negative for his plans and the motives of the entire demon tribe, including those who come after. It would be better for the demon side if this curse did not exist at all. That way, the demons could conquer the world unopposed instead of being forced to contend with the hero and the goddess's bloodline. Finally, is the curse misunderstood? If you found any of the information presented here convincing, then the answer should be yes. Rather than Demise being responsible for casting the curse that causes the cyclical nature of the Legend of Zelda, we have examined evidence that suggests that the curse might actually be upon the demon tribe instead. However, I'll leave that for you to decide for yourself. I believe that The Legend of Zelda has only scratched the surface of what the reality of its universe truly is. To quote an ancient Sheikah, "Do not take this place lightly, nor dismiss it as merely a world within your mind. The truth is much deeper than you know." I hope you got something out of this unorthodox look at the lore from The Legend of Zelda. If you've got some ideas of your own, think that I missed something, or want to push back on today's video, drop your thoughts in the comments for me. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and I'll be back with more deep dives right here on the Fused Kinstone.